Every fight begins with one common mistake: reacting too fast. When emotions hit, our brains go into defense mode, and suddenly, logic takes the back seat. We say things not to solve the issue, but to protect our pride, to prove a point, or to win a moment that's not even worth winning. The power of pausing before reacting is what separates control from chaos. It's that silent second where you choose not to fire back, not to match their tone, not to let anger speak for you. Most people believe being right is what makes them strong, but the truth is, strength shows up when you can stay calm in a situation designed to make you lose it. That's what emotional control really is. It's not about suppressing how you feel, it's about mastering what you do next. Imagine every heated conversation like a spark. One spark can light up understanding, or it can burn down trust. When you pause, you take away the oxygen that fuels the fire. It's not weakness, it's awareness. You're saying to yourself, wait, what's really happening here? That short mental reset gives your brain space to catch up before your mouth takes over. Because the moment you respond out of emotion, you hand the other person your control. You're no longer steering the conversation. Your anger is. But when you pause, you take that power back. You decide how this conversation goes, not your frustration, not your ego, not your instinct to defend. That single second is where calm becomes your weapon. Pausing doesn't mean silence forever. It means silence with purpose. It means listening not just to the words being said, but to the message behind them. Maybe the other person isn't attacking you. Maybe they're expressing hurt. Maybe they're scared. Maybe they feel unheard. When you slow down, you start to hear the real emotion beneath the noise. And that's when everything changes. You stop fighting to win and start trying to understand. That doesn't mean you let people walk all over you. It means you choose not to let anger write your script. It's not about being passive. It's about being precise with your energy. You don't waste words when your goal is clarity instead of control. People often think reacting quickly shows strength, that snapping back proves confidence. But reacting fast usually means reacting blind. Think of the best communicators you've ever seen. They don't rush to respond. They breathe, they observe, they measure. They know that every second of silence is a moment of power, not weakness. That's how you stay grounded in the middle of tension. You start seeing the argument not as a personal attack, but as a puzzle, one that needs understanding, not shouting. When you pause, you stop being part of the problem and start being part of the solution. You shift the energy from chaos to clarity, from ego to empathy. That's how fights begin to dissolve before they even fully form. Here's what happens when you don't pause. The argument grows legs. You start bringing up old issues, mixing emotions, and losing sight of what the fight was even about. You say things you'll regret, and once they're out, you can't pull them back in. That's why people say words cut deeper than actions. They linger, they echo, but a pause, it prevents that damage. It creates a moment of control in a storm of emotion. And every time you practice it, you're teaching yourself that peace isn't something you wait for, it's something you create. That's emotional maturity, and it's what turns arguments into conversations. So before the next time you're tempted to snap back, stop. Just breathe. You don't have to have the perfect comeback, and you don't have to win the moment. Winning the moment can cost you the relationship. The pause lets you remember what actually matters: connection, respect, peace of mind. Being right doesn't always fix things, but being calm does. The person who pauses first often leads the conversation to resolution. It's not about silencing yourself. It's about strengthening your response. That single moment of control doesn't just stop a fight. It changes how people see you, how they feel around you, and how you feel about yourself. Because in that pause, you prove something powerful. You're not controlled by the argument. You're in control of yourself. The 3-question rule is simple, but it's powerful enough to stop a fight in its tracks. It works because it shifts the conversation from reacting to reflecting. When tension rises, emotions take the wheel and logic disappears. This rule brings it back. The moment you feel that urge to defend, to correct, or to lash out, you pause and ask yourself 3 questions before speaking. Does this need to be said? Does this need to be said by me? Does this need to be said right now? Those questions don't just slow you down, they reprogram how you respond. They make you think, not react. And most of the time, by the time you've answered them, the emotional temperature in the room has already dropped. Because when you add reflection to emotion, you get wisdom, not war. The first question, does this need to be said, is the truth filter. In heated moments, people often say things that are true but not helpful. Honesty without timing is just noise. Not every thought deserves a voice, and not every truth brings healing. This question forces you to separate what's necessary from what's just emotional overflow. Sometimes you realize that saying it might make you feel better for a moment, but it won't make the situation better at all. Silence, in that case, becomes strength. The real measure of emotional intelligence isn't how much you speak, but how much you choose not to when it won't add value. The 3-question rule reminds you that your words carry weight, and if they don't move the situation forward, they're only holding it back. Then comes the second question. Does this need to be said by me? This one humbles your ego, because even if something does need to be said, maybe you're not the one who needs to say it. Maybe it's not your battle, not your role, not your responsibility. Maybe it's better coming from someone else, at another time, in another tone. This question reminds you that wisdom isn't just knowing what to say, it's knowing when you're not the person who should say it. So many arguments spiral because people insert themselves where they should have stayed quiet, or they try to fix something that doesn't belong to them. The second question builds emotional distance between you and the chaos, allowing you to see things without needing to control them. It's about choosing peace over pride, and that's a hard but powerful decision. And then there's the final question. Does this need to be said right now? Timing is everything in communication. The right words at the wrong time still cause damage. Sometimes the message is right, but the moment is wrong. People can't hear truth when they're emotional. They can only feel tone. This question saves you from speaking truth into a space that's not ready to receive it. It reminds you that patience can be more persuasive than pressure. Waiting for calm is not avoiding conflict. It's preparing for resolution. When you delay your words until the emotion passes, you're not losing your voice. You're strengthening its impact. Because when someone's calm, they don't just hear your words, they actually understand them. What makes the 3-question rule so effective is that it transforms your mindset mid-argument. It gives your brain a moment to switch from attack mode to assess mode. You stop being a participant in the chaos and become the calm in it. You start realizing that communication isn't about winning, it's about understanding. These questions act like a traffic light for your words, red for pause, yellow for reflect, and green for respond with purpose. The more you use them, the faster they become second nature. You'll catch yourself mid-sentence and think, wait, does this even need to be said? That awareness alone can stop a fight before it starts. You're not ignoring the problem, you're approaching it with control instead of combustion. Over time, the 3-question rule doesn't just change how you argue, it changes how you think. You become more intentional, more grounded, and more in control of your emotions. You stop reacting out of impulse and start responding out of clarity. People will notice it too. They'll see that you don't get pulled into drama easily, that your words are measured, that your presence calms the room instead of fueling it. And that's the quiet power of this rule. It builds respect. Because when you master when and how to speak, you earn trust without demanding it. The 3-question rule isn't just a way to stop fights, it's a way to build peace, one thoughtful question at a time. The reason the 3-question rule works so effectively comes down to one thing: psychology. Questions change the direction of the mind. When someone is angry or defensive, their brain is locked in survival mode. They're not listening to understand, they're listening to defend. But when you ask a question, you interrupt that emotional pattern. You shift the brain from reaction to reflection. Curiosity cools the emotional temperature because the human mind can't stay curious and angry at the same time. It's a psychological reset button that redirects attention from the argument to understanding. The moment you turn a statement into a question, you stop fighting over who's right and start focusing on what's real. That's how questions transform conflict. They invite thought instead of triggering defense. Think about it. Guys, when someone feels attacked, their natural instinct is to fight back. But when you ask them a question like, help me understand why you feel that way, or what do you need from me right now, you're telling their brain, I'm not your enemy. That subtle shift makes a massive difference. The body relaxes, the tone softens, and suddenly the walls start to lower. You're no longer pushing against them. You're standing beside them. You've turned confrontation into collaboration. That's the psychological secret behind the power of questions, and they turn tension into teamwork. It's not manipulation, it's emotional intelligence in action. It's learning how to speak in a way that keeps both sides human, even when emotions are high. Curiosity has another powerful effect. It forces empathy. You can't ask genuine questions and stay closed-minded at the same time. When you ask, why did that bother you? Or what were you trying to say there? You're stepping into their world for a moment. You're not agreeing with them, but you're giving them space to be heard. And that's often all people really need, to feel understood. When people feel heard, they stop yelling. They stop fighting for validation because they finally have it. That's why arguments end faster when curiosity enters the room. You're not giving up your perspective, you're giving respect to theirs, and that changes the entire emotional climate. On a deeper level, questions create a sense of safety. In conflict, people fear judgment, rejection, or loss of control. A question signals that you're not here to take something away. You're here to understand. That safety calms the nervous system. The brain starts releasing tension instead of adrenaline. It starts listening instead of preparing to attack. That's when communication becomes productive. You can't reach resolution when both sides are in fight or flight mode. But when you ask questions, you give the other person permission to breathe, to think, to reflect. You're saying, let's figure this out together, instead of, you need to see things my way. And that subtle shift creates trust in the middle of chaos. Even for yourself, asking questions helps regulate your emotions. When you ask internally, why am I getting so defensive? Or what am I trying to prove here? You're holding yourself accountable. You're turning the spotlight inward instead of outward. That's powerful emotional discipline. Because sometimes the problem isn't the argument, it's what the argument is revealing about you. Maybe you're feeling disrespected, unheard, or insecure. Asking yourself these questions keeps your ego from hijacking the moment. It reminds you that the goal isn't to win, it's to connect. Every self-directed question brings you closer to clarity, and clarity always leads to calm. When you understand what's really going on inside, you stop making the argument about pride and start making it about progress. So next time you feel a fight coming on, lean into curiosity. Instead of snapping back, ask, can we slow down for a second? Or, what's really bothering you right now? That's not weakness, that's strategy. It's knowing that empathy doesn't make you smaller, it makes you stronger. It takes courage to stay calm when someone else is angry. It takes wisdom to ask when it's easier to accuse. But that's how arguments stop, not because one person gives up, but because one person chooses to understand. The power of questions lies in their ability to shift focus from ego to empathy, from winning to healing. And when you can do that consistently, you don't just stop fights, you build relationships that can handle them. Let's take the 3-question rule and see how it works in real life, because theory means nothing until you apply it when it matters most. Picture this. You're in a relationship and your partner says something that stings. Your instinct is to fire back, defend yourself, or point out what they did wrong last week. But instead, you pause and silently ask yourself, does this need to be said? Does this need to be said by me? Does this need to be said right now? Maybe you realize that responding in the heat of anger won't fix the issue. It'll just add fuel to it. So you take a breath, let the moment pass, and speak when both of you are calm. That pause alone can save hours of emotional cleanup later. It turns an argument that could have lasted all night into a 5-minute conversation of clarity. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all until you mean it. Now imagine you're at work, a coworker criticizes your idea in a meeting, and the sting of embarrassment hits instantly. You want to defend yourself, maybe even throw their flaws back at them, but then you stop. You run through the 3-question rule in your mind. Does this need to be said? Maybe not, because everyone in the room will remember how you handled the moment more than what was said. Does this need to be said by me? Maybe your boss or the data can speak louder than your emotions. Does this need to be said right now? Probably not, because your feelings are louder than your logic. You stay calm, thank them for the feedback, and address it privately later with facts, not frustration. That's emotional maturity at work, using questions as your internal compass to navigate moments that test your composure. Even in friendships, this rule changes everything. Say your friend cancels plans last minute for the 3rd time. You're annoyed, maybe even hurt. You want to say, "You never prioritize me." But then you stop and think, does this need to be said right now? If you speak from irritation, you might make them defensive. But if you wait and express it calmly later, saying something like, "Hey, when plans keep changing, I feel unimportant," you open the door for understanding instead of blame. The 3-question rule gives you space to speak from a place of reason instead of reaction, and that difference decides whether your words build bridges or burn them. Most broken friendships don't end because of what was said, they end because of how it was said. Family conflicts might be where this rule matters most. Parents, siblings, relatives, they know how to push buttons that nobody else can. You might be at a family dinner, someone makes a comment about your life choices, and you feel the anger rise. The easy thing is to fire back, but the right thing is to pause and filter it. Does this need to be said? Probably not in front of everyone. Does this need to be said by me? Maybe not now. Does this need to be said right now? Definitely not when the whole table is watching. You smile, stay composed, and move on. Later, when emotions settle, you can have a private, respectful talk. That's how you protect your peace without compromising your dignity. It's not about avoiding confrontation, it's about choosing when confrontation is constructive. One of the most powerful uses of this rule is in romantic relationships, where emotions run deepest. Picture being in a disagreement with your partner, maybe about finances, chores, or priorities. Both of you feel misunderstood and voices are starting to rise. Instead of reacting to every word, you ask yourself those 3 questions. You might realize the argument isn't even about what's being said. It's about feeling unseen or unappreciated. That awareness shifts the tone instantly. You stop saying things like, "You never listen," and instead ask, "Can we try to understand what's actually upsetting us right now?" That question disarms conflict faster than any defensive statement ever could. You're not just managing an argument, you're mastering emotional connection. The beauty of the 3-question rule is that it's not just for big moments. It's for every small daily irritation that could easily spiral. The rude driver, the annoying coworker, the passive-aggressive text. It teaches you how to protect your peace in real time. You start realizing that most things don't deserve a reaction, and the ones that do deserve a thoughtful one. That's how people grow, not by learning more ways to speak, but by learning when not to. The 3-question rule is like emotional armor. It doesn't make you silent, it makes you selective. And when you use it consistently, you start to notice that fights don't just end faster, they happen less often. Because people respond differently to those who control their emotions, not those controlled by them. The long-term impact of mastering the 3-question rule goes far beyond stopping fights. It reshapes how you communicate, how people see you, and how you experience peace in your everyday life. When you consistently filter your reactions through those three simple questions, something powerful happens. Your words begin to carry weight. You no longer speak just to fill silence or defend your ego. You speak with purpose. Over time, that kind of restraint builds credibility. People start to trust that when you talk, it's worth listening to because they know your words aren't driven by impulse or anger. You become known as the calm one, the grounded one, the person who can handle pressure without crumbling or lashing out. That reputation doesn't just protect relationships, it strengthens them because trust doesn't grow from perfection, it grows from consistency, and the three-question rule teaches exactly that. In personal relationships, this habit becomes a silent force that transforms connection. Every time you choose to pause, you choose peace over pride. You start realizing that not every disagreement needs a winner, just understanding. Your partner begins to feel safer expressing themselves because they no longer fear your reaction. And when people feel safe, they become more honest, more open, and more vulnerable. That's the foundation of real intimacy. The three-question rule builds that space. A space where conversations don't turn into competitions, but into opportunities to learn about each other. You start to listen to understand, not to reply, and that single shift deepens respect in ways that constant arguing never could. What once felt like emotional battles start to feel like teamwork. You stop fighting to be right